Welcome back. It's been a little while, but I see despite the trials and tribulations of time, both you and I remain. On that note, oh boy, do I have a story to tell you. Some say that defeat is not just simply an act resulting in failure, but a failure to continue onward, a failure to understand your limitations and achieve victory through any and all means. To put it simply, without even a hint of hyperbole, you fail not when you get knocked down, but when you fail to get back up. With this said, we pick up the story where we last left off, the pit of despair. Fishing in our little corner of the world, which was so cruelly torn from us. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I was not expecting to return so soon. I was content to let Valheim rest and focus on living my life through any means. But I was supported by my friends and allies who returned with a fighting spirit far greater and more quickly than I had anticipated. And most importantly, by you, the ridiculous number of people who clicked on a single video, who chose to listen to a single story that was by all means meant to sit in the void of the vast reaches of the YouTube algorithm. And eventually, it gained recognition, which is beyond mind-boggling for me. However, no matter the circumstances, here is where my story, and this is the first time I've said this, continues. In a new world with old friends, old equipments, and old grudges. Gathering my friends and allies around me, we discussed our course of action, whether we were content to stay fishing for a while longer, or if our wrath had become unbearable. I think the answer is obvious. We decided to start again, to start fresh, but this time we would make it as far as our boats would carry us, slay as many as our blades could sustain, and etch our names into the great history of all the realms. Our current world, however, in spite of the warm memories and achievements we had taken here, was tainted by past experiences and failure. As a reminder, in the last story I told, we had reached the Mater fight through much tribulation, but on the day of the fight, found that everything we had built was gone, and we had to start over from scratch. The old world would have to go, however, so we decided to shift realms and start over with the resources each person was willing to bring in from their own realms for the purpose of vengeance. Like the Vikings of old before departing on a season of raiding, we gathered our comrades, our tools, and our rage, and we stepped into a new world. Dropping out of the sky in an all too familiar fashion, a deep sense of nostalgia overtook us. Though the seed was new, the trees and stones fresh and untouched, we immediately felt at home. Not by any sense of security, however, but in a space of chaos. The world was an unknown with vast additional lands that were not implemented on our last adventure, and we had no idea where we were going or what we would do there. It was a unique, wonderful excitement mixed with this anxiety deep in our bellies. In spite of these emotions, or perhaps even fueled by them, we spread out into the world. This time, not as scared, barely clothed fighters, but as seasoned warriors and crafters, dauntless in the face of what was once terrifying to us. In absolutely no time at all, we secured a location for our home base, a smaller pointed chunk of land on the coast of a lake that connected by river to oceans in every direction. Our experience and drive started to show the real difference between returning to these woods versus just surviving them. In practically no time, the four of us in the advanced group leveled the earth, raised walls, and built a crafting house, a bunk cabin, and an open firehouse for when we needed a moment's respite. Before we knew it, we had transformed a chunk of this world into a base that could support as many people as we wanted to bring into this world. We had brought order to the chaos and crafted a tool, despite being crude in nature, that we would use to strike out into every corner, every nook and cranny of this world. Now, we knew what we needed to do. Roles were given out, and while 1 or 2 people stayed at the home base to improve it, the rest would be sent out on expeditions to locate resources, lay out the map, and find it. The quest was laid out, and we scoured the map like a group of wraiths, searching desperately for the one we would bring death upon. The Dragon Modder, however, was elusive and would not be found so easily. Scouring every mountain biome we could set foot on, our supplies started to dwindle and our crafting started to fall behind. So, lacking the logistical support, we decided it was time to fight on our main front, the home front, and built up bases in what felt like the furthest corners of Valheim. One base, which was eventually known as the Bronze Barony, was built up by my friend, Happily Doomed, and served as our port and support base for most of the expedition, as well as a wooden fortress to withstand assault. While much further on the south side, we built a frontier fort for the purpose of rest and recuperation for anyone heading further south or into its neighboring mountain and swamp biomes. It wasn't just the new bases, however, that got built up. As the riches of the land started to flow back into our main base, changes started to occur quickly and slowly. Each of the buildings at our home base were set to be improved and reworked to craft larger and more complex recipes, while also needing more space to hold all of our newfound wealth of resources obviously meant we needed an improvement in our storage. The small bunkhouse was absolutely torn down and replaced with a grand hall, not just for rest, but for gatherings and celebrations. No more would we gather in the mud and rain. Instead, we would be warmed by the fire and by our comrades' jubilation. A truly magnificent center, if I may say so myself. However, the greatest transformation was by far the Bronze Barony, taking the initiative to give us a forward location that could be used to process any and all resources that could be ripped from the land. Doomed went a little overboard and decided, what's the point of a fortress if it doesn't compensate for something? And raised mighty, impenetrable walls around the barony. Layer after layer of stone now sits, looming over any who dare approach. We still lived in times of uncertainty, but if there was one thing we could be certain of, it was that no matter how far we sailed, our homes would still be standing when we returned. With peace of mind achieved and supply lines firmly put in place, we continued farther and farther until finally we found them. Dusting off an ancient lore stone in the middle of nowhere, we were able to uncover the location of Modder. On the far southeastern side of our explored land lay a stretch of mountains, surrounded by plains and filled with riches of silver and danger. And in the center of it all, our prey, our vengeance, awaited us patiently. But we would not go diving in head first, since some of our allies were not properly kitted out yet, and we knew the dangers of challenging a god without a base to fall back on. So, Fort Schleckenlitz was formed, also known as the Nameless Fort. The name is pronounced differently with each and every rendition. Walls were built boldly out of the plains, and we dared the inhabitants to challenge our claim. Putting our previous attempts to shame, we gathered the needed eggs scattered across the mountains, built up a secondary portal in a stone tower overlooking the boss arena. We signed off and waited to pull together a raid party. And the day arrived. This time, Odin smiled on us, and the group was ready. We set off with pockets filled to the brim with arrows, meat, and any supplies that we could possibly need. Uncertainties and fears started to develop in our hearts as we got close, each of us carrying the incredibly heavy eggs required to summon the monster. But as we placed that last egg and the dragon emerged, there was nothing but rage. This would, however, be a brawl. We chipped away at the dragon, bit by bit, dodging left and right whenever needed, and then the golems arrived, taking as much damage as a boulder and hitting harder than a truck. These would be a bit of a problem. Splitting up the team at moments, we tried to have 2 warriors focus golems while 2 kept whittling at the monster's health. That worked until it didn't. Facing 2 sudden casualties, we were forced to throttle the aggression and just try to keep the damn thing from regenerating its health back while we've avoided all of the enemies spawning around us. And then it lost interest in the 2 moving targets and decided to focus on an easier target. It went for the tower. While 2 of our warriors were recuperating on the other side of the portal, it took the portal. As it laid waste to our fort, it became a pitched fight as we desperately tried to rebuild the portal and reclaim our beachhead, while also trying not to die in the process. At one point, it even killed 2 warriors as they jumped through a fresh portal and straight into its jaws. We were blasted with cold, torn to pieces, and absolutely crushed. But when nothing else remained, when the cold and the pain washed over us, our rage lived on.
I can't
hit him. Smack him, dude. Just fucking smack. Ow, bitch.
Kill him.
Beat the shit out of him. Get in there.
Stamina. Got it.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, give me.
As the dust cleared, all was still, besides the snow slowly falling at our feet. 4 stood. We had won. But was it really enough? No. As you can see, our vengeance was not so easily tamed after last time. We had gathered additional eggs from all across Valheim and sailed them to our frontier base. We scoured every possible mountain, every possible canyon we could find, and we could bring Mater back 3 more times. And we did. With our bloodlust finally quieted, we regrouped. Split up the loot, the material, to finally improve our bases. The one last thing that kept us from experiencing these new lands was finally in our possession. Once again, the world was ours, our borders stretched wide, and our simple bases transformed into fortresses and works of art. It was a true paradise. Except for one thing. Every time we looked out onto the open water, the waves of change and adventure, we could not help but feel it. The sensation that any true Viking would feel, gazing out on the seemingly never-ending rolling waves ahead of them. Feeling the time pass and the wind hit your face. We felt it. Wanderlust. Wanderlust. There was still a whole world out there, beyond our borders, beyond our understanding, but now within our means, and it will be ours. Let's go! New vid, new me. Welcome back, everyone, and no one. Thank you so much for checking out the video, and apologies for how long it took to get this one out. Long story short, I've been living in a very hot southern location, and it's been determined that I need to move back to the cold north. So I've been a little bit busy. I also got COVID in the mix of all that, so that's fun. Anyway, you are all amazing people, and I honestly cannot say it enough. Thank you for your amazing support. If it wasn't for you guys clicking through and checking out the video of a nobody like me, I wouldn't have returned to Valheim so quickly. I wouldn't have gotten these experiences and had this amazing adventure without your guys' input and support. Expect more to follow, as this story is far from over, and we are currently exploring the vast mist lands in this new update. But anyway, thank you again for watching, and I will see you wherever our stories may lead.